It's my life. It's my livelihood. It's what put food on our table for a long time, even with my grandmother, with my aunt, and with myself. So, when I say beading is life, I mean it. Blood, the blood in my veins are probably beads.
Jocelyn Marshall is an experienced professional beader from Membertou on the island of Unama'ki, also known as Cape Breton in Nova Scotia, Canada. In September of 2024, she was joined by two younger contemporary artists, Rosalee Doucette-MacNeil and Neve Stevens of Escasoni, in presenting work at an exhibition on contemporary beading curated by Tara Johnson in conjunction with the Cape Breton University Art Gallery. The exhibition was titled Kina'masultinej, in English, Let's Learn Together. The show remained open to the public until February 21st of 2025. In this episode, I'm joined in the studio by Jocelyn and Tara to continue a discussion initiated by that exhibition in which we explore the significance of beading in our time, its meaning and the impact it has had not only on their lives, but also within the communities where they live and work. In the course of our conversation, Jocelyn shares her thoughts on a major heritage project with which she has been involved, initiated by the Mi'kmaq de Burt Cultural Center. The project, which involves the assessment of historical Mi'kmaq artifacts, including beaded works in the collections of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, will see their eventual repatriation and return to Mi'kmaq. In today's conversation, Jocelyn discusses the deeply moving experience of connecting with the beaded artifacts, as well as the personal connections she has discovered in the course of her involvement in the project. This podcast was recorded in Unama'ki on the traditional and unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The Cape Breton University Art Gallery recognizes its role in honoring the treaties of peace and friendship with a commitment to continually learn the truth of our collective history and build towards reconciliation and authentic allyship. I'm your host, Greg Davies, and this is The Strait and Narrow. Jocelyn, Tara, welcome to the show. And why don't we go straight into it? And I'll ask you that question we were talking about before. What does beading mean to you?
Beading means to me, it's more than the traditional aspect, more than the spiritual aspect. It's more than the financial aspect. I think when it's all rolled into one, there's something pretty special there. I think Tara can attest to that. When beading is your life, it's your life, and it's my life. It's my livelihood. It's what put food on our table for a long time, even with my grandmother, with my aunt, and with myself. So, when I say beading is life, I mean it. Blood, the blood in my veins are probably beads.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
For sure.
But I mean, for me, on that level, I love doing it. And I love being around people who also love it and find that joy and the passion that I do.
Right. So it's a continuation of that.
Yes.
Of that tradition that's also very important. And Tara, you do beading as well.
Yes.
So just to go back a little bit, because listeners might not be aware of this, but we had a beading show at the CBU Art Gallery, and you were co-curator on that exhibition. And Jocelyn, you were, I'm not just going to say a participant, but actually kind of a mentor in all of that. But that show, for me as a curator and as somebody working in the gallery, was a really important show, even though it was relatively small, because it opened the door for conversations on beading, which we hadn't had before. And I think most of the people who came to that show were quite excited and surprised to see what was on the walls. They were sort of transported to places they hadn't expected to necessarily be transported to. Now, you didn't have your beading in that show, but you are a beader. And so maybe I'll ask you the same question. What does beading mean to you?
So beading for me is like, for me, like when I first started beading, it was for me to like reestablish my roots, because as someone who's grown up being mixed race, it's really hard defining where you belong in the world. And so I always felt like there was a cut-off connection to my Indigenous heritage. Even though I grew up in community in Potlotek, like there was times where I felt the disconnect, like I really wanted to connect to my culture. And so when I first started to get to bead, it was like, in a way, it was healing, and it was also reestablishing those roots and being able to finally do something I felt like I was like, okay, like look what I'm making with my hands, and I'm able to create this. And so for me, it was like reestablishing those roots within myself and healing. And it's also just has worked well for me because like I'm someone with anxiety. And so when you have anxiety, it's really hard to like get out of your head. And so beading for me is like one of those methods of getting out of your head, because once you start beading, you just turn the brain off. You're just stitch by stitch by stitch. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's another important aspect of it too, also the process, right? Of being sort of enveloped in this process, which allows you to kind of go into almost like a trance-like state, I would say.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, as an artist myself, I experience, although it's usually with paint, but a similar kind of thing where you kind of allow your body to take over and your mind shuts off all the anxieties and stresses of the day, which, I mean, I think if we're talking about beading as a healing process as well, I think that's a very interesting kind of aspect to look at as well. So, Jocelyn, you've been beading for how long now?
I've been beading for about 13 years.
Okay.
But full-time, maybe about 10 years. So about a decade.
And I know from things you've said in the past, we've had conversations about this before, that your kids are kind of involved in beading as well.
Yeah, my 17-year-old now, she kind of took a liking to it. So she did a class project last year, and her project, she did a portrait medallion of me, of my face, and oh my God, that was comical. But she did a good job. Like, I only had to help her a little bit. My younger children now are learning the step-by-step processes of beading. So I mean, right from the picking up the needle to the sinew to the thread to gathering their materials, and they know there's a process. You don't just pick them up and start.
Right.
So for even me to be able to educate my children on only take what you need, and the concept of nedugulim within artwork, within beadwork, it's very important, I think, especially to Mi'kmaq, because we have a responsibility, to pass this down. And my late mentor, Aggie Baby Gould, would always say, share, 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 because this is how we pass it on. And I had another mentor of mine say, when I spoke of medicines and picking medicines, and I said, well, when my kids get older, they can pick medicine with me. And my mentor told me if they want to, and that was a big thing.
No pressure.
Yeah. So I don't want my kids to feel pressure to kind of, do the same work I do. But it's nice for them to learn.
Right. Right.
My hands are a testament to, you don't want to do this too long.
Yeah. And as far as the status, I guess, of beading at this point in time, do you find that younger people are becoming more and more engaged with beading?
I mean, if you were to compare it to from when I was a kid to now, I would say there's a lot more beaders, and I love seeing that. And like my community particularly, there wasn't that many beaders, and it was a lot of the older generation that knew how to bead. But it was one of my mentors, which is Jasmine Marshall. She took it upon herself to start teaching us, and like what she would do is she'd do small fundraisers, get some money, buy the supplies, and we just have a beading night. And I think that was probably one of the coolest things I got to do in high school, because that was something I always wanted to learn, was beading. And I started out where I had to teach myself how to do the fringe earrings, which is a ladder and brick stitch, but I never knew how to bead on felt, and Jasmine was my first mentor. And it's kind of funny too, because I actually got my first bead kit from Aggie Baby. Yeah. And so she was someone I would buy my bead supplies from. And she would actually show us, like, if we go see her, she would show us like a quick little bead tutorial. And that was really cool of her. And it's kind of funny too, because like Aggie Baby and I find Jazz had the same type of mentality of like basically pass it on, keep teaching it. Because she had asked us, like, and it's kind of, I tell this story all the time, but she'd asked us if I were to die, would you teach beading for free? And I was like, yeah, of course. And so anytime someone asked me if I could do a beading workshop or if I could teach beading, I'm like, yep, but I do not take money. I do it for free. So as long as you have the supplies, I'm willing to do it. And a lot of people are usually like, oh, why do you do that? And I'm like, I go into the story and then I'm like, but she hasn't died. She is very much alive. I just really liked her philosophy. Yeah.
I think I've seen a lot of emergence of new artists during COVID times, you know, and that made me really proud because, you know, we're a sovereign people. We're a sovereign nation. We can make what we want, sell it where we want, to who we want, you know, and I think a big part of me was, you know, when I seen that, it made me proud because for a long time it was me, Aggie, and a few others in the community. And then I start seeing the younger artists come out and really nailing their work, you know, as first-time beaders. And I'll tell you, when I got into beading and I found out there was glow-in-the-dark beads, I was on it. I was on everything. I was beading like Tupac, Nipsey Hussle. I was beading all these rappers out there, Ice Cube, Eazy-E. I was doing them all. And I was like, I'm going to make beading cool again. And, you know, for me, that was one of the things where I was like, you know, let's up the game a little bit. I want to see how these work and how these, you know. So, I mean, the pop culture in the art, in your own beadwork is kind of, you know, people don't always want the traditional pieces.
Right.
I love it. I mean, to me, it's... you make what you want when you want, right? Exactly. And that's the beautiful part of it. You can create something so beautiful from nothing.
Yes.
So to see these young beaders come out and, you know, just really focusing on their work is like, wow, because I know how much patience it takes. I know how much time it takes. And for these young ones to kind of put their focus into their work and into their art, like, I'm so proud of everybody out there doing any art. And, you know, because in our culture, like I talked about before, we didn't always have that.
Right.
But through COVID, you know, you've seen everybody, I need money.
Yes.
I'm going to sell my art. And that's for a lot of people, I think, how they got started too, right?
Yeah.
Is those hard times are knocking and all you have is your hands. So
it's a practical way of looking at it for sure.
Yeah.
There's another side to that also that I think is kind of interesting, which is, so there's the marketable beading, and there is obviously a market for that. And it's a wonderful thing to see younger people committing to that because, I mean, I think we can all collectively agree that there's a tremendous amount of labor that goes into making a beaded work. So it's a real commitment of time and energy to see that through. But then I think there are also a lot of works that are being produced now that are not necessarily designed for sort of commercial sales, but are making a statement or some kind of a critical commentary. That there's content to the work that transcends just the item that appeals to the eye or appeals to somebody who wants to buy a piece of beaded work. And I would say some of the work that we had in the show definitely lean towards that. And some of the pieces that you're talking about as well with the wrappers, it's the content there transcends just something that's commercially appealing. And What are your thoughts on where beading is going now at this point in time, especially with younger people who are embracing more pop culture or maybe making statements through their beaded work?
Well, I do see it, but I think what's really hard is that there's also still a lot of there should be more appreciation for beadwork. And so it feels like at times it's underappreciated because people assume that we could put easily 12 hours into a piece. We could easily put 24 hours into a piece.
Right.
And they sometimes they want it for dirt cheap.
Right.
And so when we do create pieces that are more of an art or like a statement piece, it's harder for the artists for if they want to sell it or if they want to let it go.
Right.
And so a lot of artists, they don't really have the time and energy to go and do those same types of pieces because the economy just doesn't really support that area right now.
Right.
And that's the hard part. But I do love when I get to see artists who just go ahead and do it anyways. But a lot of the time, it does rely on, for instance, those artist grants that have been coming out. The Cape Breton one. It's
the Creative Catalyst.
Creative Catalyst,
Catalyst
yeah.
program. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm actually a part of a group now. It's Beading is Healing. So it's just a new group, but we're starting it out. It's with Doucette-MacNeil. And they're looking at putting out bead kits into hospitals and into institutions and stuff like that.
That's interesting.
So we've been working on that. And kind of, you have to kind of know your target audience. But I mean, as far as people being appreciative of the work and knowing where to sell it. And, I love seeing that now because if somebody wants to sell something, it's going to be sold. There's going to be at least one person out there that sees it and wants it, or they know their friend will want it. I mean, as far as our work being out there in mass numbers, that won't happen. We're only one person. I can't make 500 pieces in a month and call it a day. But I love the way it's going now because we see people appreciating it more, and I think even people wearing it now, I talked about before, the cultural appropriation thing. And when people aren't Mi'kmaq or Indigenous, I think they feel a little I don't want to be culturally appropriating by wearing this beadwork.
Right.
So I think to call it cultural appreciation, and to kind of promote our work, even though they're not Indigenous, they're still out there promoting our work. There's a story to be told with the work that they're buying too. So, I mean, I love that. I love that beading now isn't something that's so secretive, I guess. I mean, you don't see our work anywhere really unless we're out there promoting it.
Right.
So that self-promotion and showing up for yourself and having that network of friends that really go hard for you and will help promote your stuff, it's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. And that wearing aspect, the wearing of beading, of beaded items, in a sense is the completion of the work, is it not? Because there's the initial concept, there's the making of it, there's the process, which can involve, as you pointed out with your own family, multiple participants in that, including your children. But then once the work has been sold or once it's moved on to another person, or even staying with the artist, there's the wearing of it, which is a performative part for some, but it's also a symbolic gesture. And the work, to me, it's a little bit, if I had to draw an analogy, it would be a little bit like taking, say, a painting and placing it on the wall of the gallery. That's the moment where it's kind of complete. And so, and whatever the work contains in terms of its content and its symbolism, that then relates to the wearer, to the person who's. So I think that's another aspect of it that seems to me important to consider. And I understand how, say, somebody who is non-Indigenous wearing something might feel a little self-conscious about this and might feel they're culturally appropriating. But if they've spoken with the artist, with the beader, and they've discussed what the work is about and they understand its meaning, well, then it can actually build a connection between that wearer and the person who's created it that could be quite meaningful.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too, like the stories that come with the art once it's finished, we have that chance as an artist to kind of educate and bring awareness.
Yep.
If it's a red dress pin or an orange shirt day pin, it
Right.
opens that door to have that conversation and bring awareness to people who don't really know about issues in our communities.
For sure, yeah. Have you had that experience with any of your own work, Tara? Like in terms of some of the beaded work that you've made, going off to somebody else, that the meaningfulness of the work for you transferring to the person who then purchases it or wears it afterwards, that there's a kind of connection that's strengthened or formed between you and that individual?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think it's because it's like when you create these pieces, you kind of put your heart into it. So when someone buys it, it's like you build that connection because you talk about the piece and what it represents and what
Right.
it means to you. So it's not just about selling a piece. It's also like talking about it and what it meant to you. So
Right.
yeah. So when I first started out though, I mean, I would just post it and not really talk about the pieces itself. But I think after I got more experience and I started learning more, I started wanting to put more history behind my pieces. So when I create pieces, I usually do it in terms of like representation, in terms of like, okay, what do I want to create? So one piece I did was based on amethyst. And that was because I read a legend where amethyst is the protection stone for the Mi'kmaq. And I thought that was such a cool thing. So I created earrings and I knew that if I was going to sell it, I would want someone to appreciate and understand why I created it. And so when I posted it up, I made sure to go into why I created the piece and what it represents to me. And I was able to find buyers like really quick, and that was really cool. But it was just cool to be able to like have someone understand what the piece meant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel I've been slowly going that route because I'm a big history fan. So
Yep.
I've been connecting history more to my pieces now. And for me, I think why I like it is because like at the same time, it's educational.
Right.
Because a lot of the time when you look into Mi'kmaq history, it's usually very dark, very sad. And so I like to be able to create pieces that could be more uplifting. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a sharing of knowledge behind that too, which I think is really important for people to know about and to understand. I know from some of the shows that I've done in the past when we've talked about language, indigenous languages, and the degree to which so much has been lost over time. The process of capturing or returning to that and learning about it and then bringing it back obviously is extremely resonant, but that can happen with visual art too. And the sharing of knowledge and stories that people don't necessarily know about. And not even necessarily non-Indigenous, but even an Indigenous audience might not know some of these stories. It's a way of sharing that knowledge and building those bridges, which I think is really quite remarkable.
Yeah, I think so too, because I mean, you look back 70 years and our people weren't able to practice any of
Exactly.
this.
Yeah,
So,
exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
and that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it
And,
certainly isn't.
So I think now wearing our identity through our art is something that, it makes you feel proud.
Yeah.
And, like I said, it opens up that door to have a conversation with people who might just be like, oh, I love your necklace or your earrings, and oh, thank you, I made them. Oh, you made them,
Yeah.
and then it starts
A
to
very
fall with
gradual
that.
process
Yeah.
of becoming connected, for sure.
So I think even with like when we see other people wearing beaded art, it kind of draws you to them. Like, oh, I'm going to go see where she got her earrings. And,
Right.
like it does make those little connections. But I think even just the sharing of the knowledge, there's a lot there, But like I said, there's a lot for us to learn, too, from one another. And I think it's great because it's also a tool to help educate, like Tara said, right? And help share the knowledge that was passed down to us, I think, from, people gone now.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to kind of pass it down. Like I said before, I mean, what we know has to be shared.
Yeah.
We can't take that to the grave with us. So it's no good to us there.
Right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of sharing of knowledge and learning, would you mind if we delved a little bit into your trip to Washington and what that was all about? Because you've spoken of it a number of times to us before, and what an important experience that was, and challenging at the same time, a little daunting, but clearly a very important one. Would you like to go into that a little bit and tell us?
Yeah, so I think it was 3 years ago, Mi'kmaq Way Doucette Cultural Center reached out to me and asked me if I would like to sit on their panel with the bead practitioners. So I hopped on, every month going up for a meeting for a little while, and they brought up, we're going to be sending 2 practitioners down twice in 2024. So I was like, I'm on, or 2025. I was like, I hope they pick me. I hope they pick me, just in the back of my mind. And when I got the message, I was just, sure, I'll go. I'm on board, and then we got down there, and the work that I'd seen, these items are all from the 1700s and up. So seeing the work we had to do was a little bit overwhelming. I mean, I sat there and it kind of scared me a little bit. I mean, because the responsibility of handling them was a lot. There was over 500 items that we looked through, and maybe fixed maybe half of those items just to stabilize for the transportation home. Those items will be coming back in 2028.
That's exciting.
And the new center will be open by then, hopefully, in Doucette.
Yeah.
So I've been on with them for 3 years, and I've learned a lot in the way from other practitioners, not just the beaders, but the basket makers as well, and the quillers. The curatorial crew at MDCC and the curatorial crew at the Smithsonian were amazing. We have to give them a shout out for, taking care of our items for this long, being stewards of our pieces. Yeah. For me, I think that's just amazing because it's ours. We need it home before our elders are gone.
Exactly.
We need to hear the stories that come with some of these pieces that may have been lost.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me to be a part of that MDCC group for the past 3 years is... it kind of helped change my perspective on my own art. It makes me want to go out there and do bigger and better and more traditional. And I mean, that's something that I know I had to take a small break from my own work to work with this crew because it was a job that was much bigger and much more important than my own work.
Right.
I mean, it was overwhelming because you can feel the spirit of these pieces, and you could feel the energy from some of these pieces that haven't been out of their box for maybe 50 years. I mean, unless they're being observed. But the pieces coming back are, it's going to be amazing, because like I said, the stories that are coming back with these pieces is what we need to know.
Right. A lot of these works were in storage, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's another aspect, and this is me speaking as a curator now. But one thing that I find fascinating about it is when they return, and you specifically mentioned that timing is kind of critical here to ensure that they return in time for these elders to see these works as well, that they're going to transform when they return because they'll no longer become, I guess, for want of a better expression, embalmed works, things to be locked away and kept in storage. Now they'll be more like living, they always have been living objects, but that life that is sustained within them will be ever more present once they return. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so this is another conversation we had was when they do come home to have ceremony for them because they need that, you know, and I think it's important to have these pieces reconnect with our people through ceremony before they're put back away.
Right.
And,
Right. Yeah.
you know, for me, that holds a special place in my heart because when I was down there, I was wishing that my grandmother was still alive, you know, because, man, she would be so proud of me.
Yeah.
And it was almost a full circle kind of moment when we were there because somebody had brought up that my grandmother was a beater. And in the reference books they have, one of them is Let Us Remember the Old Mi'kmaq, and my grandmother's picture is in there.
Oh.
And so when they mentioned my grandmother's name, my boss had actually opened the book up and to my grandmother's picture.
Oh.
And it almost felt like in that moment, like she was there with me.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of like, even though my grandmother isn't around to live out her legacy with her beadwork, I'm here. I'm doing it,
Yes.
you know, and
Yeah.
as scared as I was, we got the job done.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so, I
Yeah.
mean, that's probably been the highlight of my bead career.
Yeah.
In the past 10 years, I was like, how did I get to DC? Well, but for me, it just showed me that beadwork is really important.
Yeah.
And it always has been.
Well,
you know?
I want to thank you for sharing that experience with us, and because there's so many things contained in what you've just said that are so important for people to hear about and to know. I can't help but ask you as a follow-up to that. So, as you reflect on all of this, what are some of the things that you would maybe single out as important in terms of how that experience has transformed your beadwork now at this point in time, and where you want to go with it or what you want to do with it?
I think just even seeing the process from, you know, the older pieces, how they were made, how they held up over hundreds and hundreds of years, made me really kind of look at my own work and tell myself, like, I'm going to make this so it lasts a lifetime.
Yeah.
And if that means using more material like sinew opposed to thread,
Right.
Real leather opposed to leatherette,
Yes.
you know, certain things like that. Not putting any chemicals on my beads because that's a no-no. That's a no-no. People use Mod Podge. People use clear nail polish, and those are big no-nos. One of the things I think, too, is people don't realize that beads that are made from glass actually go through, they call it glass disease. I mean,
Yes.
but the curators don't like to use the word disease, right?
Yeah.
But in the future, that's caused by the elements. So, I mean, keeping your beadwork stored in the right humidity, out of the rain, out of the water, things like this. You know, I think looking into the older pieces, I was just so amazed that, you know, in another 100, 200 years, if my work will still be floating around, then I hope it will be, you know.
Yes.
So the longevity of my pieces, I don't slap things together, you know. I use top-of-line material for the longevity of the pieces, you know, because some of the stuff I was able to try on down there. One of the beaded jackets, it was like it was made just for me, and I was like, wow, I should walk out of here. But the amazing thing was, like, the beadwork was so well intact. You know, and but we did see differences between the use of thread and the use of animal hair, and the glass disease was more prevalent with the thread.
Oh,
I see.
interesting.
So the thread had actually impacted the glass.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
You know, the reactions from moisture and
the quality of materials that's used in all arts is a highly critical issue, and certainly in the times that we live in now, synthetic materials are much more readily available for most, and sometimes it's a cost factor. But whenever and wherever we can look back to the past to learn from the materials used in the past that have proven over time that their quality is an important learning experience. We've been talking a little bit before about sort of the synthetic materials that are around today, and Tara, we've had this conversation before about different kinds of beads and what's available. There's obviously room for synthetic materials, like you've been talking, for instance, Jocelyn, about the glow-in-the-dark beads, for instance, right? So, I mean, that's of our time. There's a value in using those synthetic materials because it's not just the material nature of those things, but the meaning they body forth. If you're using glow-in-the-dark beads, for instance, and you're doing something that's very contemporary or pop culture reference, there's a direct connection between those. It seems to me there's an interesting challenge for beaders who want to use older techniques or to adopt some of those materials, but also to embrace a little bit of the new synthetic materials as well, and to create meaningful works by bringing some of those things together as well. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I see it that way. And I also see people out there like Mariah Battist. She owns Sundlace Creations. So now you can even buy horsehair on her
Yeah.
site.
Shout out to Mariah there.
And yes, for the, and I mean, God love her. She keeps up to date with everything. And for her to have available horsehair, rabbit fur, stuff like that, we have to outsource leather. We have to outsource almost everything we buy as beaders here in Cape Breton.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to really utilize what you have around you. I mean, I'm a big fan of Mariah because she doesn't just sell the work on her bead page. She also gives tutorials. She also,
She's sharing knowledge.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's a big, that for me, when I see people out there, entrepreneurial end of that, but really noticing that, okay, I sell all of this, but let me bring in some of this horsehair and let me bring in some furs and see how it does. And I mean, that part of it is like, wow, man, she's really up to date with what she has on her site for people like us who have to outsource.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of the time, like, the reason why we do have to outsource, for instance, like leather is one of the main ones we always have to outsource. And that's just because, like, a lot of the knowledge on how to, like, cure the hides and make those types of hides have been lost. And there's only very few people out there who do know how to make it. And so that's why it usually leads to outsourcing.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us would prefer to be able to just buy locally. Like, that's always the choice
Ideally.
we want to make.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it relies on synthetic methods as well. So, and that's even in the same case with like more modern beading, for instance. Like, we use cabs, we use centerpieces. So it's like some of it's wood burn pieces, some of it's acrylic, some of it is metal. And so, like, the types of cabs we use are usually outsourced as well. And so it makes you realize, like, how much we have to outsource to create our art. But at the same time, it is a bit challenging at times, but it's also really fun to use synthetic pieces. I don't think there's anything wrong with using those pieces. But in terms of longevity, I do see issues with if we do continue down that route of using synthetic. But yeah.
Well, I suppose when you're looking at the quality of materials and making that choice, do I use this, for instance, will it decompose or decay over time? There's an important choice in that decision to use that material or not use it, because the ephemeral nature of the material might be part of the meaning of the work.
Exactly.
Maybe you don't want it to necessarily last because in decaying, it's making a statement that's relevant to
It's a part of their journey.
Exactly.
The piece's journey.
Yeah. So it seems to me, I mean, in many ways, I think this would be a very exciting time to be doing beading because you have much wider range of choice for the materials and the meanings those materials body forth. But I wanted to ask you, Tara, also because I know we've had lots of conversations about old techniques and materials, and I know you've done some exploration of pigments. We've taught conversations about pigments, and in a very similar way to what Jocelyn was talking about, this process of going back and discovering or learning about old techniques and materials that have, in many cases, been lost. I know this is important to you, so I'm just wondering, in the case of your beadwork, and I wouldn't even limit it to just beadwork because I know you're interested in other methods of making in the creative arts. But do you see this as something that is not only important to you, but something in the process of learning about older materials and techniques, something that you also want to share through your work with other people to kind of bring that back?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, when I do go back to connecting to our roots and trying older methods, for me, it's also like taking on a two-eyed seeing perspective, because a lot of the time I end up combining modern techniques with the old ways.
Right.
And so pigments was one of the methods in which I did that because I wanted to create a stabilized pigment. And so how I did that was I ended up using modern techniques to turn it into a watercolor. So turning it into a watercolor, it helped stabilize it so I wouldn't have to worry about basically getting mold or anything like that. And it worked great. And I also currently do that with creating cabs now. So that was something I always wanted to do, was make my own cabs. And so to do that, what I had to do was learn how to use resin. So resin was one of the methods I had to learn. And then I would use medicines. So I would use stuff that I felt was connected to my own identity or heritage, and I would include it into these cabs. And I started making my own centerpieces because that's something I always wanted to try. And yeah, so for me, it's like, in a way, it's a two-eyed seeing perspective because I'm combining Western and modern techniques with my own traditional view sets.
Right.
Yeah.
And just for the benefit of listeners who might not be familiar with the expression two-eyed seeing, that's a way of looking at things that melds Indigenous ways of seeing and understanding, if I'm correct?
Yeah.
With modern Western
Yes.
ways of thinking, kind of blending of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm just also wondering if, because you work here at CBU and we've had conversations about doing things like workshops, possibly doing workshops down the road, which is a way of sharing that knowledge. You're sharing some of that knowledge even right now. You're both sharing that knowledge right here as we sit at this table. Through the artwork is one way to kind of share that knowledge for sure. But do you see yourself being involved in anything down the road? Any other methods or ways of sharing what you learn about older techniques and sort of the knowledge you gain?
Yeah, so I hope to one day, and I'm hoping it's going to be my master's thesis, but I want to create a teaching aid on not just pigments, but looking at different types of like Indigenous ways of knowing for the crafts and create teaching aids that could be used in schools. So that's what I hope to do.
That would be wonderful.
Of course, I still want to teach workshops as well, because workshops are important to me, because one of the best ways for us to learn is always hands-on learning. So as much as I would love to do videos, I know videos don't always help and it could get confusing, so it doesn't always translate. And so workshops for me has always been the best method of teaching people. So I do hope to continue to do those. And I hope when my thesis is done, I could be able to give it to schools that they could use. Yeah.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. I was going to throw in one little thing here because we talked a little bit earlier before about the labor aspect of beading and the commitment, the willingness to say, I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of time doing this thing. But in an age where we're so frequently asked to be distracted by things and to sort of listen to things in terms of sound bites and move on very quickly to the next thing, the process of slow, labor-intensive work is more than just a commitment. I think it's a willingness to embrace another way of functioning within this world, which is resisting this very, I'd have to say really a very Western thing that has been cultivated over time, this insistence on grabbing your attention all the time. And media is doing that all the time. Social media does it all the time. That I think in some ways, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I tend to see creative processes like beading as an act of resistance against some of that. It's not even necessarily consciously done. I think it's something that just is endemic to it, but the willingness to embrace it on some level, even if it's subconscious, is a willingness to say, enough of that. I want to embrace something that gives me time to absorb what I'm focusing on now.
Yeah, I think it really grounds you. I mean, for me, I have to be in a good way to sit down and bead. Like I said, you don't want to put that medicine into your work, but it grounds you. I think it humbles you.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
It humbles you. For me, I don't bead anywhere other than my table. But this summer was the first time I beaded while we were camping. So everybody else was still sleeping. We were in PEI. I put my beads out on the picnic table. And boy, I sold that medallion before we got out of the campground that day. But for me to take myself out of my own comfort zone and actually put my beads outside. So a few weeks ago, I was doing a feather for one of my friends, and I sat out on my front step and there was no wind, and I actually sat there. I listened to my music. I beaded. And I mean, even for me to be beading outside was like, oh my God, who are you? Like, because I technically, I try to avoid the outside world when I bead. So for me to do that outside this summer was kind of a big, it was a big step for me.
Right.
I usually bead on our way to places, so I bead in my vehicle. I bead everywhere, really, but outside isn't one of my things because it's always windy.
Right.
Our weather here isn't the best, but this summer I kind of was like, oh, man, I'm getting that itch. I need to bead again, and I don't care if I do it outside. I'm doing it,
We did have a very good summer for outdoor activities this year. It was particularly good.
And I think it slows you down enough, like you said, right? If you're struggling with something like even ADHD, or if you're struggling with, anxiety, it helps you just to put your focus on one thing. And I think that's where when my life could be falling down around me and everything's falling in, but as long as I have my beads, I know I'm good.
Yeah.
I know that, the world around me can wait. Yeah. I have to do what I have to do, and that's for me is working on your own time. Yeah, you have no boss to tell you get back to work. My son, who's 6 years old, told me yesterday, I didn't even start on these birch bark poppies that I'm doing. And he looks at me and he says, I thought you said you were going to sell those yesterday. And I was like, oh, I guess he's watching my hours, so I better get back to work. But to kind of give yourself a time out and say, I'm going to work 5 hours today.
Yeah.
And even if that 5 hours is broken up, I still got that 5 hours out of the way. I mean, I have 7 children, so life is pretty busy all the time.
Yeah.
So my time is night. I'm a night owl.
Right.
And I think, being able to slow yourself down enough in society to just, nobody bother me for a little bit. I got to go do something. I think you find that it's reflecting too. You sit there, you reflect a lot. There's prayers. Some pieces I've done have been maybe 10 to 12 hours that I worked on them. Every single stitch I laid was a prayer because some of the work I'm doing is they're healing pieces, like the portrait medallion. So I tend to actually pray the whole time I do those pieces.
Yeah.
In that way of the spiritual side of beading, I think we have no choice but to slow down in society.
Yeah.
Tap into ourselves, disconnect to reconnect, and do it all over again the next day.
Yeah. So one thing for advice out there for new beaders and for beaders in general is to be gentle with yourself. And because we live in a fast-paced world, that's very true. And like what Jocelyn was saying, like you have to disconnect and reconnect to your work. And oftentimes we're not gentle enough with ourselves and we judge our work and we don't think it's good enough.
Right.
So oftentimes when you feel that, just put your piece away and come back to it and you'll realize, oh, I was a little too hard on myself.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a very important message.
Yes.
And this world has a tendency to make us very judgmental about ourselves. Puts a lot of pressure on us. So I think those are sound words to end on. You've been listening to The Strait and Narrow, the official podcast of the Cape Breton University Art Gallery. My special thanks to today's guests, Jocelyn Marshall and Tara Johnson. Our sound technicians have been Chris Jones and Derek Gallant. I'm your host, Greg Davies, curator of the Cape Breton University Art Gallery. Thanks for joining us today, and please stay tuned for further episodes featuring more guests from Unama'ki, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, and Atlantic Canada.